Welcome, everyone, to our lecture on evolutionary biology. Today, we are going to explore the role of variations. If you have ever wondered why no two individuals in a population are exactly alike, or how species manage to survive catastrophic environmental changes, you are in the right place. We will build our understanding from the ground up, starting with simple intuition and moving all the way to the mathematical models that biologists use to predict the future of a species. Let us dive in. To begin our journey into evolutionary biology, let us start with a simple analogy. Imagine you are playing a highly competitive card game, but every single card in your deck is exactly the same, like the two of clubs. No matter what strategy your opponent uses, you only have one possible move. You cannot adapt. Now, imagine playing with a full, diverse deck containing hearts, spades, kings, and aces. This variety gives you multiple options, allowing you to survive and win no matter what unexpected challenges the game throws at you. Variation is your ultimate tool for victory. Now that we understand the card game analogy, let us apply this to the natural world. Populations of living things face a continuous, high-stakes game of survival against diseases, predators, and changing climates. If every individual in a population is genetically identical, they are holding that same two of clubs. A single new disease could wipe out the entire group because no one has the genetic cards to fight it off. This is exactly why variation is the absolute most critical ingredient for life to persist and evolve over time. Without it, extinction is almost guaranteed. Building on this intuitive understanding, we must now formally define what these differences are in biology. In evolutionary biology, heritable variations refer to the underlying genetic differences that exist among individuals within a population, which can be passed down from parents to offspring. Where do these differences come from? They arise primarily through random mutations, which are spontaneous changes in the DNA sequence, and through genetic recombination during sexual reproduction. These genetic differences serve as the fundamental raw material upon which evolutionary forces, like natural selection, can act to shape a species. With our formal definition in place, let us look at why this matters in our daily lives, starting with agriculture. The importance of genetic variation cannot be overstated. It acts as the ultimate insurance policy for a species against an unpredictable environment. For example, when farmers plant vast fields of genetically identical crops, a practice known as monoculture, they are taking a massive risk. Because none of the plants have a natural resistance, a single pest or fungal infection can destroy the entire harvest overnight. The lack of variation makes the entire agricultural system incredibly fragile. Moving from agriculture to medicine, we see another powerful demonstration of this principle. When doctors prescribe antibiotics, they are applying a severe environmental pressure to a bacterial population. Because there is immense genetic variation within that bacterial population, it often means a few bacteria naturally possess mutations that make them resistant to the drug. These surviving bacteria then reproduce, passing on their resistant traits to the next generation. This perfectly demonstrates how variation allows a population to adapt and overcome severe environmental pressures, which is a major challenge in modern medicine. Having seen the real-world impact of genetic variation, we now need a way to measure it mathematically. To truly understand how variation drives evolution, biologists use a powerful model known as the breeder's equation. The formula is R equals H squared times S. Let us break down these symbols. R represents the response to selection, which is the actual evolutionary change we see in the offspring. The symbol H squared stands for narrow sense heritability, a measure from 0 to 1 indicating how much variation is due to genetics. Finally, S represents the selection differential, which is the difference between the average trait value of the chosen breeders and the original population. If heritability increases, the evolutionary response increases. Now that we have our mathematical model, let us see how it works with a classic example from nature. Imagine a population of wild finches with an average beak depth of 9.0 millimeters. After a severe drought, only finches with larger beaks survive, averaging 11.0 millimeters. First, we find the selection differential, S, by subtracting the original average from the survivor's average, giving us 2.0 millimeters. Next, we multiply this by the heritability, which is 0.6, to find the evolutionary response, R, yielding 1.2 millimeters. Finally, we add this response to the original population average. The new average beak depth for the next generation is 10.2 millimeters. While nature selects for survival, humans also use this exact same principle for artificial selection. A dairy farmer wants to increase milk yield. Her current herd averages 25 liters per day, and she selects the best cows averaging 30 liters. We calculate the selection differential, S, by subtracting 25 from 30, giving us 5 liters. Because milk yield is heavily influenced by diet, the heritability is lower at 0.3. We multiply 0.3 by 5 to get an evolutionary response of 1.5 liters. Adding this to the original 25 liters, the new generation will average 26.5 liters per day. Notice how the lower genetic variation limited the evolutionary speed. We have successfully used the breeder's equation to calculate change, but this formula also allows us to prove a fundamental limit of evolution. We want to mathematically prove that variation is the absolute bottleneck for adaptation. To set up our proof, let us assume a hypothetical population where every individual is genetically identical. Because there are no genetic differences that can be passed on, the narrow sense heritability, denoted as H squared, is exactly 0. At the same time, let us assume a severe environmental crisis occurs, creating a very strong selection pressure, meaning we have a large value for S. This sets the stage for our calculation. Continuing with our assumption of 0 heritability, let us see what the mathematics dictates. We start with the breeder's equation, where R equals H squared times S. We substitute our heritability value of 0 into the equation. Now, we're multiplying 0 by our large selection pressure, S. As we know from basic algebra, any value multiplied by 0 is exactly 0. Therefore, the evolutionary response R is 0. This mathematically proves our concept. No matter how strong the survival pressure is, if heritable variation is missing, the population simply cannot evolve. Evolution stops completely. So, we have proven mathematically that variation is essential. Now, let us visualize exactly what this evolutionary shift looks like. On your screen is a graph where the horizontal axis represents the trait value, like beak size, and the vertical axis is the number of individuals. The solid bell curve shows our original population. Notice the shaded blue region on the far right? These are the selected parents who survived the environmental pressure. Because they possess the advantageous variations, they reproduce. The dotted curve represents the offspring generation. You can clearly see the entire bell curve has shifted to the right. This horizontal shift is the evolutionary response, R, visually demonstrating how the population has adapted. Having visualized the shift, let us bring together everything we have learned today. First, heritable variations are the fundamental building blocks of all evolutionary change. They provide a diverse pool of traits, acting as an insurance policy that ensures at least some individuals can survive unpredictable environmental shifts, diseases, or predators. Second, as we proved using the breeder's equation, without this underlying genetic diversity, both natural and artificial selection are completely powerless. Ultimately, variation is not just a random occurrence. It is the essential creative force that has allowed life on Earth to adapt, diversify, and flourish over billions of years. Thank you for joining this lecture.